were trying to resist Donald Trump and him unleashing his Gestapo and the National Guard in Portland, in Chicago, in California, pretty much everywhere. Stephen Miller has openly tweeted the supervillain plot, accusing the rest of us or any of us who resist as left-wing terrorists, and has used the word insurrection yet again because he wants to unleash the Insurrection Act, and is using the word invasion because apparently he believes that the U.S. is being invaded by people who look like me. But judges, folks, even Republican-appointed judges, are saying, not so fast. So the person who understands this really well, who's researched it, and who talked about it late last night as it was breaking, is, of course, the one, the only, the indefatigable Allison Gill of Mueller, She Wrote and the Daily Beans podcast, who now has videos up on Midas Touch. She never sleeps. She's a machine. Allison, the somewhat good news. I know, folks, things are terrible, but we have to take the good news. And I think there is some good news here. As Trump and Stephen Miller and Russell Vought are overreaching, as they're being braggadocious, arrogant, openly sharing their plot, thinking that the world is going to actually rally. I think these are all signs of weakness. The overreach is a sign of weakness, and now you're seeing pushback come from every angle. Allison, can you break down the good news? I think it's good news of what we found out last night.
Yeah, sure. I was had the honor of jumping on and talking to Anna Bauer from Lawfare and Adam Klasfeld from All Rise News. And we talked about how we had just dialed into a hearing, an emergency hearing called at the last minute on a Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, in Oregon. And basically the timeline sort of breaks down like this. And the judge took note of the interesting timeline. Right. So Trump called up National Guard to Portland and Oregon, both the state and the city, sued. And Judge Immergut, who is a Trump appointee, issued a temporary restraining order saying your memo is no good. There's nothing bad going on the ground. Your justification is, untethered to the facts and reality to send National Guard troops to Portland. There's like 10 people out there. One of them's dressed up in a giant inflatable capybara outfit. Like, it's Portland. It's chill. So no, I'm enjoining you from sending the National Guard, the Oregon National Guard, based on your memo. So what does Trump do? Trump says, okay, well, let's send the California National Guard, who we federalized last June for the same bullshit in Los Angeles. And so he did that. And then Gavin Newsom jumped onto the Oregon lawsuit and said, no, we need our National Guard troops here in California for actual important stuff and important work. So then they filed that lawsuit, and pretty much immediately after that, the Trump administration went to Greg Abbott in Texas and said, can we send your National Guard? Will you give us a hard time? And he's like, nope, of course not. Send 400 National Guard to Portland and Chicago. And then the judge was like, all right. We're having a hearing in an hour on a Sunday night in the dark of night. And it was funny because it took about an hour, actually. The hearing actually didn't start until about 10 minutes till 8, like almost an hour late. And meanwhile, some of the brightest and most amazing legal minds, and then me, were texting each other in the middle of the night on a Sunday night. It was Anna Bauer, Adam Klasfeld, Katie Fang was trying to get in, Mikhail McClanahan at National Security Counselors. He's the lawyer who's helping me sue to release the Epstein files under a Freedom of Information Act request. We were all sort of chatting and waiting to get into this hearing. And then when we got in, the hearing was pretty incredible. The judge was very upset and asked the Department of Justice to tell her why this wasn't gamesmanship. How is this not gamesmanship? How are you not circumventing my order? By saying, well, okay, we won't call up the Oregon National Guard then because you blocked us from that memo. So we're going to send California and we're going to send Texas. She's like, how is that not violating the spirit of my order? Well, when we called up the California National Guard in that memo in June, it was, to help protect federal property. And so we're using that to protect federal property in Portland. She's like, Mr. Hamilton. She must have said that like 10 times. Mr. Hamilton,
She was pissed.
And so right there from the bench, she ruled after, by the way, reminding Mr. Hamilton multiple times, "You are an officer of the court and obligated to tell me the truth." Uh, she ruled from the bench, "All right, fine. You want to play that game? I didn't think I'd have to do this, but I will issue a second restraining order saying that National Guard from any state or DC can be sent to Portland because my order," she said, "is based on the fact that there's nothing going on the ground in Portland that warrants the National Guard, not which National Guard can be called up." That wasn't the point of my ruling. The point of my ruling is you're full of shit. Portland's awesome. You can't have National Guard. So she issued that second restraining order. And we were all just sort of like, because this, again, is a Trump appointed judge. And of
Oh,
course,
Trump appointed. Yeah. Okay. I was thanks for I knew she was Republican appointed. I forget that she was Trump appointed. And the fact that she did it back to back on a Sunday night with those words against a Trump lawyer, she was pissed. That's I think also big news is that she's like, no. She's like, even though Trump appointed me, I'm gonna go for the rule of law. But continue. Sorry, Allison.
yeah, no, that's basically it. And again, I explained a little bit about why it's a temporary restraining order, why it only lasts 14 days. A TRO can't be more than 14 days. You can extend it once for an additional 14 days. The idea being, while I decide whether or not I'm going to issue a preliminary injunction, which is a more permanent block against the guard being called up, while I decide that, right now you can't do it. We need to keep everything status quo and follow the law temporarily while I consider a more robust one. Now, of course, Donald Trump and the Trump regime have already gone to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals with this, and you're not supposed to be able to appeal a temporary restraining order because it's a temporary restraining order. You got to wait till you get a more permanent ruling to appeal it because temporary restraining orders are based on first impressions and whether or not they make a good showing of irreparable harm. And California and Oregon were able to do that, and that they have standing, and that the judge has jurisdiction. So, she was so mad, and at the end, when Mr. Hamilton was like, "Oh," she's like, "All right, we good? Okay, do you understand my order? Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? Nobody goes to Portland for a minute while I work on a preliminary injunction." And Mr. Hamilton was like, "I have one more thing, Your Honor," and everyone was like, "No, like, keep your mouth shut, bro." She's like, "What?" And he's like, "You know how we asked you for an administrative stay as well as the Ninth Circuit, and we also asked you for a more permanent stay?" And she's like, "Yeah, those are both denied. Court is adjourned. Like, get
Like,
out of
go
my
home.
face." It
And
was,
then look, you made a point that this is an administration that treats the rule of law and the Constitution as Play-Doh, and they have their hacks and their reeks in the Supreme Court. We understand, and we know how they've defied court rulings before. For example, when it came to the 200 plus men, including Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who were abducted. Detained and then deported without due process, and Judge Brosberg ordered that plane to turn around, and they said, "Oh, well, it's too late. It's in international waters." And then even after ICE itself admitted that they sent Kilmar Abrego Garcia on air, they have since then, to this day, refused to admit that error and instead, created and manufactured what I think are defamatory statements against Kilmar Abrego Garcia. So we know that they kind of treat the law like Play-Doh. However, what the good news here, folks, is that a Trump-appointed judge last night slapped him down in the face, and hope is contagious, but so is courage. And then today, a couple hours ago, Allison, you saw Illinois and Oregon are following suit and suing as well. And now you're seeing this resistance from these three states, Oregon, Illinois, and California, banding together, the governors banding together, the mayors banding together, the communities banding together, the lawyers banding together. And people might say, okay, well, what does it matter, Allison and Waj? You have the Trump administration. And my response to that is this is a weakened administration filled with incompetent, reckless, unstable people stabbing each other in the back that doesn't have the numbers. And what we're seeing right now is multiple leaks in the ship's hull. And they're trying to put band-aids on all the holes, but there's just too many holes. Economy is souring, our allies are souring, Epstein files ain't going anywhere. Candace Owens is promoting conspiracy theories. Laura Loomer's pissed off. The base is pissed off about Israel and bailing out Argentina. And now you got the National Guard everywhere, and 60% of Americans are against this. And the numbers have come out. He's negative double digits on the economy, on inflation, on tariffs, and now he's negative 10 on immigration. So for me, more and more resistance like this, even if it seems small, it's the opposite of capitulation. And it's another problem for Stephen Miller, Russell Vought, Pete Hegseth, and Donald Trump. Your take on it?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I just want to point out one more thing about the case, of the hearing that happened last night. We've seen multiple times, I have at least, and folks who listen to like the Jack podcast about Jack Smith's investigations, multiple times Donald Trump make one representation in the court, in a courtroom, and another to the public because he knows he can't get away with the lies and the propaganda in court most of the time. For example, when he told everybody he declassified the documents that were in his shitter with his mind, I can declassify whatever I want. He never made that argument in court because it's BS. And also because he knew that it didn't matter if the documents were classified. The Espionage Act is about national defense information, not how classified something is. He also wanted to do what's called an advice of counsel defense, where he told everybody in the world publicly, my lawyers told me not to hand over the classified documents. But he never put forth that defense in court because it's BS. He also told the public he called the National Guard out to D.C. On January 6th. I called out and had 10,000 National Guard troops. But in court, he didn't make that assertion, nor did, I think, Kash Patel when he testified in the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment case in Colorado. He didn't lie on the stand and say that Trump called out 10,000 National Guard. He said Trump didn't call out any Guard troops on January 6th. That's why they had to pivot to blaming Nancy Pelosi for not doing it, and that somehow it's her job, even though now we know Donald Trump loves to call out the National Guard and is really the only one that can do it in D.C. So with all of that in mind, this hearing last night, the argument that the government was making to send troops into Portland from California and Texas was that the judge said only Oregon National Guard can be called up. It was a technicality. Had he been able to make the argument that the situation on the ground in Portland, it warrants the California National Guard being called up, that's a whole different story, because that's the basis for her original restraining order. But they can't make that. They can't make that claim that the situation on the ground in Portland is bad. It's a war zone. They make it to the public. Stephen Miller shows videos to Donald Trump of Umbrella Man, a boogaloo boy, breaking windows and starting fires in the George Floyd protests, and says, look at what the radical left is doing in Portland. It's mayhem. It's war. It's insurrection. And so that's the public message, is that it's war-torn and war-ravaged, and people are attacking their ICE agents left and right. But they did not make that case in court, because that would be the way to be able to justify sending Guard troops from California, is to say, hey, the situation on the ground has changed, Your Honor, since Friday. We now have this violent action and this violent action and this violent. 10 people rammed our folks and blocked them in. That's all propaganda, and it can't hold up in court, and that's why they didn't make that claim.
Well, speaking about exactly what you just said, about 5 minutes ago at 1:31 p.m., blonde Barbie Levitt was asked by a reporter which local officials in Portland have said that the National Guard is needed there. And this is her exact response. The judge's opinion is untethered in reality and the law.
She stole
So
the judge's words. Because that's what the judge said about Trump.
Exactly. And so my response to that is projection. It's literally 100% projection. These people function on projection. They reveal themselves. My God. And look at these lie after lie after lie, folks. And none of this, look, in the videos that have been coming out, the resistance is also, I want to say another thing before, there's another case that came out. Well, let's talk about the Supreme Court. I'm talking about different aspects of resistance that are just death by a thousand cuts to this regime. And I know everyone's looking for a haymaker. It doesn't work that way. Oftentimes when Allison and I come on here, we keep saying, to resist a fascist regime is death through a thousand cuts, where everyone does their part and becomes insurmountable. All right, hole in the hull of the ship until it becomes a flood. And there's the numbers. We have the numbers. Let's talk about Ghislaine Maxwell, where the Supreme Court did something for once that was actually applause worthy. Can you tell us what happened with the Ghislaine Maxwell conviction?
Oh, with the Supreme Court thing?
Yes,
Yeah. So Ghislaine Maxwell. Oh my gosh. I mean, we know the whole story, right?
we know.
We broke that here on this Substack on the breakdown. That Ghislaine Maxwell's Bureau of Prisons point screen. She had her sex offender status waived so she could be moved to a low security prison, and her status was her incarceration status is called out custody, which means she's able to work outside of the walls. Now, of course, the right wing, Glenn Greenwald and Ghislaine's lawyer went ape shit on me on Twitter, like, she's not leaving the facility. I'm like, I didn't say she did. I said she can. If you wanna right now tell the public, especially the citizens of Bryan, Texas, where this facility is, that she will not be leaving the facility, make that declaration right now, and they would not do it. So we know all about that. She had appealed, obviously, just through the her right to appeal her conviction. And we were all waiting for what the Department of Justice was going to do, Trump's Department of Justice, how they were going to reply to Ghislaine Maxwell saying, I'm part of that sweetheart deal in 2006, the one that they never told the victims about, the one where where Epstein paid for the survivors' lawyers. I'm part of that non-prosecution agreement. And so I shouldn't be here. Not I'm innocent, but I'm protected by that non-prosecution agreement. And the DOJ, Trump's DOJ, I can't imagine what it must have been like. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall. How do we respond to this? Without making her mad. She's already leaking all this shit to the to the Wall Street Journal. How do we get her to stop, right? And so they delayed responding and delayed responding and delayed responding to the appeals court. And finally they responded and said, and this Department of Justice said, we do not support her appeal. She's not part of the non-prosecution agreement. Her conviction is good and it stands. And that's when shit fell apart and stories started to leak. And the meeting with Blanche happened and she got moved to a low security prison. And then, of course, that went to the Supreme Court. And we were waiting to see if the Supreme Court was going to hear her appeal. And so they've said, no, your conviction stands, basically. And so, go ahead. I mean, that's where we are.
No, which means that the only way she can get pardoned for her 20-year prison sentence that she's serving, she was convicted 4 years ago on federal charges to facilitate the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. The crimes, of course, were soliciting sex with a minor, raping girls, and Trump could actually pardon her if he wants. Let's see if he's going to go there. But what we've seen in the last week with the Supreme Court is even the Supreme Court has its limits. And the reason being, in my opinion, Allison, is the Supreme Court is populated with right-wing hacks in black robes. Some of these people are so naked that they admit the plot openly, like Judge Thomas and Alito, where Thomas has openly said that precedent is no longer a concern and he won't be relying upon it, right? So I'm very curious as they have returned to the court today, and they have a bunch of cases. What they're going to tackle, I personally believe they're going to go after marriage equality. People say, no, watch, it's a step too far. Well, you all said that about Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I don't think he's going to touch the Loving v. Virginia because that would invalidate marriage with his best friend Ginny. But he'll go after everything else. But I digress. The two things, though, if you've noticed, that they have gone against Trump, if you will, are the Epstein files because they know the base. And like I said before, over 80% of Republicans, 80% of independent voters, 80% of MAGA, and nearly 90% of Democrats want the release of the Epstein files. So they know in order to protect their skin and the base, we ain't going to go against the Epstein files. So the other thing that they did last week,
And Mike
they didn't
Johnson
want to
sent
mess with.
everybody home. He said for another week. Gave
Oh, yeah.
everybody
Well,
another
we'll
week
talk about
long.
that in one second. Yeah, we'll talk about that in one second. But another thing that they did was they realized, you know what? We'll let Trump be authoritarian on everything, but if he messes with the Federal Reserve, that's not good for our bottom line. So you can't fire Lisa Cook. Just let the Federal Reserve be independent because we like money, 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 money. But speaking about Epstein, even though the Supreme Court's not touching it, can you tell us what super Christian, very, very religious Mike Johnson has decided to do with Adelita Grijalda?
Grijalva. Grijalva. Um, First of all, she won that seat by 40 points
Wow.
in Arizona's 7th district. It's a Democratic district. Her father held it before her, Raul Grijalva. I grew up there, so they're like my little sister state.
I like how the little tear of pride was there right now.
Mhm. And she's taking over for her father, who died doing complications of cancer treatment. She's brilliant. She's wonderful. She's incredible. She's going to be a wonderful lawmaker. If you've been watching the media at all, or if you've seen any of the memes going around of screenshots of what MSNBC was showing you, they'll show you the last, I think, 4 people who won their special elections in the House were sworn in the next day. And, including both Republicans and Democrats, except for her. She's the 218th signature on the discharge petition to force a vote in the House on the release of the Epstein files. And whether they win or lose, that vote is important. But also what's important is everybody has to go on the record
There you go.
for how they feel about releasing the Epstein files. And so he has decided, first of all, he was like, well, we don't get the official results until October 14th from Arizona. And everyone's like, yeah, but you've never waited for official results before to swear people in. So, regardless, he's decided to postpone in the middle of a government shutdown.
Yep.
When our elected officials should be trying to negotiate a way to get the government open again and running again so that our troops get paid and our government workers get paid instead of working for free. TSA agents, you going to travel anytime soon? They're working for no money. So, he said, we're going to take another week off. And so he's not going to come back until, I think, the 13th of October. So he's running away. It's some people are calling it the Epstein shutdown. The government shutdown is because they don't
Yep.
want to release the Epstein files.
Yep.
Or at least not even release the Epstein files, just get a vote on it. Because, I mean, if we think about it, if you vote on releasing the Epstein files, you still have to get the Department of Justice and the FBI and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Donald Trump are going to get together and redact whatever they want to redact from them and release whatever they want to release from them, which is what they promised they were going to do on day one. So that's going to take a long time to do. And we're probably not going to get what we want, even if they vote yes on it. They just don't even want to have the vote.
That's how afraid they are, folks, that she has been there in DC for about 2 weeks, even before the shutdown. She's like, hey, I'm here, swear me in. I'm here, swear me in. And also, as Ro Khanna and others have said, and she's also gone on record saying, is that she'll give them the vote. She will give them the 218th vote to vote for the release of the Epstein files. And they should have all the votes to release the Epstein files. There's a bipartisan movement by Kana and Thomas Massey. Also, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert have signed on, and I'm pretty sure a few other Republicans might as well. So Mike Johnson was so terrified of this that back in the summer, in August, he was so terrified of even like Allison getting the votes on record, right? That he was so terrified that a few Republicans at that time they didn't have the votes. That he was so terrified that just maybe at the last second, a few Republicans might switch. That what did he do? He shut down the House. He shut down the House early, and then these Republicans went to Israel to meet Netanyahu. That's how terrified they are, which is why I have been saying for several months, and I'll say again, Epstein. Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. One of the three major cankles of the Donald Trump presidency is the Epstein files. The other, in my opinion, is the economy and his health. They cannot escape Epstein. He has tried his best. Folks, at what Allison just said, that's right. They'd keep the government shut down rather than release the Epstein files. That's how compromising those files are, whatever's in those files. And what we know since May, a Wall Street Journal, that flaming rag of the left wing Antifa. Wall Street Journal said that Pam Bondi told Donald Trump in May that he's all up in the files, which means since May, this administration has been engaged in what? A cover up. We can use those words. It's a cover up. And as Allison said, once things started leaking, that was, by the way, Ghislaine Maxwell, who just randomly decided to leak the notebook to, again, Wall Street Journal, Todd Blanche. Allison mentioned him, for those who don't know, was Trump's personal attorney, assistant attorney general, who, by the way, never leaves D.C., decides to leave D.C., go spend 2 days with Ghislaine Maxwell. And you should be asking, well, where was this prosecutor? Isn't that the job of the prosecutor? Oh, yeah, Maureen Comey. She was fired. So Maureen Comey was fired. So that means Donald Trump's personal attorney goes for 2 days, and voila, less than a week later, who would have thought that Ghislaine Maxwell gets sent from Florida to a minimum security camp in Texas, even though that has never, ever happened to a person with that status before? Who authorized it? No one knows, but I digress. And now we have this progressive Democrat who's literally will give the 218th vote to Kana and Massey to vote for the release of the Epstein files, and they'd rather shut down the government. So I think that is a pretty big story, Allison.
It is. It is. And they want the government shut down. That's why they don't care that they're not at the negotiating table right now, because the Epstein files blockade is more important to them than funding the government. And I just, put out my show yesterday on Midas. I have receipts. I have the proof that they want the government to stay shut down, that Trump and especially Russ Vought want to do that. And I bring the receipts. I also happen to know and got confirmation from experts who, these are like the most experty experts you can possibly talk to about continuing resolutions and rule changes in the Senate. And I've been saying it since the beginning. And I went to confirm it with a bunch of experts just to make sure that the same was true for continuing resolutions. The Republicans can end the shutdown in the Senate without a single Democratic vote. They can, and they can do it without permanently nuking the filibuster. And they can write a rule so narrow that they nuke the filibuster for just this bill. When you've got majority in the Senate, you can pretty much make the rules. 3 weeks ago, they changed the rules. They lowered the 60-vote threshold so that they could put through 100 Trump nominees at once. They know how to do it. They just did it. They just did it 3 weeks ago. And then after I put that out, even Marjorie Taylor Greene said, she tweeted, hold on, you're going to die. You're going to die. Oh my God. You're going to die. Whoa. Sorry, I'm Joey Pantone. Whoa. I have to share this Marjorie Taylor Greene tweet with you. On the government shutdown, here's what you're not being told. If Republican senators wanted to pass the CR and reopen the government, they could, by using the nuclear option to override the 60-vote rule and pass the CR with a simple majority. We have 53 Republican senators. That's Marjorie Taylor Greene. What's going on with her?
I think she sees where the wind is blowing. And I think her and Tucker and Candace have seen the fissure within the MAGA movement. I've been following this for a while.
And they're
And I
picking
think
the Epstein files release side?
two things they're picking to vulture off and maintain their power and to usurp, if you will, the new MAGA movement after Trump goes, because they see JD Vance as a fraud. The two things that they're picking on, if you've noticed, Israel, Epstein. And on Israel and Epstein, they are very much aligned with the left wing in the sense that they're very critical of Israel, critical of Netanyahu, hate the genocide, don't want to send the money. And on Epstein, they're like, release the files. And they realize this is where the base is moving, the base that we have helped radicalize. They also realize, especially with Israel, there's some people who are America first, there's some people who are against genocide, and there's also some people, let's be honest, who are just straight up anti Semitic. And there's a few people where it's all of the above, right? But regardless, they're like, ooh, these are two weaknesses that GOP and the modern MAGA movement cannot escape, but we can pivot ourselves out, win over some independents, maybe even win over some Democrats. So I honestly think that's where they're at. And so what I tell people, Allison, is that Tucker Carlson, Lauren Boebert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene are not your friends. They are terrible people, but use
Right. Yeah, I
them.
just wanted to
Yeah,
put that out there because everyone's like, she's not a hero. Absolutely.
yeah,
She
but
is
some people.
no hero.
No, he's terrible. And you see some people say, I've had these conversations with folks, and I literally like look at them right in the eye, and they're like, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Candace Owen has been saying some good stuff. I'm like, yes, listen to the rest of the podcast. She is terrible. Yes, on this one thing, sure, a white trash clock can be right twice a
A
day,
white
but
trash clock.
everything else is terrible. So I just want people to know that, and I'm all for. If you notice on me on Twitter, I did it yesterday. Laura Loomer went against, I think it was Candace or someone else on Israel, and I said trouble's brewing. I'm like, oh, this is intriguing. So I troll, folks. I troll openly because me, Allison, a few others, maybe so many others, we have to spend time, unfortunately, following the right wing because they dominate media, they dominate the news. And so I know how they think and I see these fissures. I try to be ahead of it. And I just try to learn from our British colonizers in the past and divide and conquer, Allison.
Nice. Learn from our British colonizers in the past. I mean, that's what they're doing to us. That's what they're
Yeah,
doing to
exactly.
us. Every once in a while, I'll run into an argument online of people arguing about the differences between a leftist and a liberal and a progressive and a moderate and a centrist and an ever-Trumper and I think I put a post out about this the other day. All of those things I just mentioned is the same to a billionaire. Every
There you
single
go.
one of those people is the
There
same
you
to
go.
a billionaire, and they don't give a shit, you know, whether you're Medicare for all or full direct nationalized healthcare or expanding Affordable Care Act. They want you fighting with each other and not mad at them for what they're doing to you. There was a hit piece out on veterans today
Wow.
from the Washington Post. The
I saw I
billionaire.
saw that. I saw that, and I'm so it just came out 2 hours ago. How some veterans exploit the $193 billion Virginia program due to lax controls. It was at 12:02 p.m. I haven't opened it, Allison, but literally, I just want to set this up for you because literally when I saw that, I'm like, what the hell? They're attacking veterans? But go for it as a veteran.
So 10 months ago, I said, everybody who's a veteran, go get your shots, go get your appointments, get your dental care, get it all, because I think that our benefits are going away. People are like, what do you mean our benefits are going away? I'm like, look at Project 2025. They want to get rid of what's called Group 7 and Group 8 veterans benefits. They want to get rid of non-combat related issues. So like my PTSD, my severe PTSD because of my sexual assault, my military sexual assault, that's not combat related. That was 10 months ago. I'm like, they're going to come after your benefits. So this huge piece comes out in the Washington Post. And what they've done is they've taken a handful of actual fraudulent
That's what I thought.
disability cases from veterans who built the system, and they've applied it to this broader language of, hey, did you know that if you have tinnitus, migraines, depression, and PTSD, you get more money than somebody who is missing a one limb below the knee. Like, they're doing this, they're going after the PACT Act. They're degrading that. They're saying they're accusing basically the VA of making it so easy for veterans to defraud the system. Ask any veteran you know how easy it is to get veterans benefits. Ask them, hey, is it a breeze? Is it like the Bezos Washington Post is telling everybody that it's super easy to get your benefits and game the system? Because that's what they're doing. They're actually starting to insinuate that non-combat injuries are not worth your benefits and nitpicking these tiny little things. Tinnitus, for example. They're like, did you lose your hearing relevant to migraines that you get from depression, or did you lose your hearing because you heard you were in the middle of gunfire? Insinuating that only people who were in combat, which is a very, very low percentage of veterans, are entitled to veterans benefits. And then they tried to tie it to being able-bodied. Those words are being used in this article multiple times. There are people who are getting veterans benefits who can still work. Can you believe it?
Disgusting. How dare
And
they?
I haven't even fully absorbed this. Lee McGowan, politics girl, sent this to me this morning, and she goes, does this look like propaganda to you to start taking away veterans benefits? I was like, yes, it absolutely 100% does. It mentions non-combat veterans. It mentions things like, one woman said got a hysterectomy, and they were like, she didn't lose her uterus in combat. Why does she get benefits? Like, it's that insidious.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because my spidey sense, I'm telling you folks, I was live with Danielle and Demarxiation, we get these alerts, and I saw that. And I just read it for you. I read it to you all right as I saw it, how veterans exploit $193 billion Virginia program due to lax controls. And I didn't even click on it. And my spidey sense said, huh, the Washington Post is knocking on these vets in my spidey sense. Like, I was like, So I'm so glad you brought that up, Allison. And of course, Washington Post is owned by a billionaire, Jeff Bezos. And I got Jen Budd coming in a couple of minutes, well, at 2:00. But I want to ask you this because I think it's all connected. And I want to end on this. Billionaires. Jeff Bezos, billionaire, owns Washington Post. Jeff Bezos, a billionaire, has given $100 million to Van Jones, who went on Bill Maher's show and with Thomas Frieden yucked it up about dead Gaza kids. HBO and CNN are owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. Billionaire Larry Ellison, hardcore Trumper, the largest single private donor to Israel, hardcore Zionist, wants to now buy Warner Brothers Discovery, HBO, CNN, after he just bought TikTok. His son, Nepo baby David Ellison, is the head of Paramount CBS. Paramount
And we have
CBS,
the Paramount Skydance merger, which resulted
Skydance,
in Colbert. And then we have the Tegna merger, which resulted in Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, it's all over.
and
Uh,
$150 million purchase of Barry Weiss by David Ellison. And Barry
Barry
Weiss, as of
Weiss.
today, is now the head of CBS News and just
That would
sent.
be like putting me in charge of the New York Times. And like, I'm not trying to knock myself here, but like, that would be like putting the Mueller she wrote lady in charge of the New York Times.
No, you'd be much better. I think that. Why are you knocking yourself? Mueller, she wrote.
I didn't even, I don't have my degree is in public health. Like, it's just not a thing. But why?
No, but your journalism is much better, much more thorough. Barry Weiss's Free Press is a joke. Barry Weiss's Free Press, she, according to the New York Times,
Okay,
one
it
of
would
the
be like putting me in charge of brain surgery at
there you go.
Johns Hopkins. How about that?
I think you would be much better. You're much more qualified, and if you're head of CBS News, be much better. But Barry Weiss, folks, the Free Press, overvalued at 150 million. People are like maybe 10 million, 15 million. Barry Weiss, who has long used the Free Press as a salon for the privileged laments of billionaires to crush the woke. Also, she has spent her entire career trying to crush and silence any pro-Palestinian voice, runs interference for Israel. that Barry Weiss, who was my colleague at New York Times, who in her tenure had more public snafus that would have gotten the rest of us fired and humiliated, but she found a way to fail up. One of her advisors is David Sachs, billionaire, part of the South African PayPal oligarchy, who's the head of Donald Trump's. He's a czar of AI for Donald Trump,
They're
apparently according to
gobbling
the New York Times,
everything up, Waj. They're
gobbling
gobbling.
everything up, and now they have CBS. And Allison yesterday said something to me. I just want to end on this. Is she says she's like, "Hey man, you want to go live?" It was like Sunday, and I was like, "I do, but I'm so tired." And then she goes, "Okay, that's fine." And I'm like, "We're freaks." And then your response to me saying we're freaks, you said, "In 40 years, they'll write books about a handful of us independent journalists who tried our best to be honest and truthful." So the rest of us are trying. Allison does 80 jobs, folks. There's 2,300 people watching us right now. If you can, please subscribe to Mueller, She Wrote. It's free. She's a terrible capitalist like me. All of this work she does, she puts it out for free. Please listen to and subscribe to the Daily Beans podcast. And Allison, tell them about the new thing that you're doing because you don't sleep at Midas.
Oh yeah, I have a weekly video show at Midas, and you can see it. I've posted about it. I'll probably put it up on my Substack too, so you can catch that. And Waj, everybody, by the way, if you don't already follow the Left Hook, I assume you do. And if you can, if you are able, if you have the means to kick in and support, definitely do it. But we're bad capitalists. There's no paywall. There's never a paywall. We just it's totally voluntary to do that. But I just wanted to bring this post to your attention. I made this post
Please.
1 week after the election, November
Hmm.
of 2024. I said, billionaire grifters are about to dismantle your government. So instead of your tax dollars going to Medicare or Medicaid or Affordable Care Act subsidies or to veterans benefits or Social Security, it will go to them in the form of tax cuts for the wealthy. 1 week after the election. So now,
Oligarchy.
check
It's the oligarchy.
Medicare, check. Medicaid, check. Affordable Care Act, check. Veterans benefits, I think based on that story that just came out, check. Social Security, I mean, how many times have we heard the word able-bodied being bandied about? They're going to
There you go.
apply that, means test veterans, means test disabled people. Instead of an article saying it would be cheaper for all veterans to just get free health care forever, instead of that article and an actual comparison of what we spend to limit veterans benefits versus how much just giving free benefits to all veterans would be half the cost. Instead of that analysis, they want to throw a handful of fraudulent people out at us and say, look, veterans are terrible. And they've been for a long time trying to degrade and denigrate veterans and active duty service members, suckers and losers.
Yep.
Our military is gay as hell or whatever, and like to try
Stop
to.
being, be less gay.
So
Be less gay.
they're trying to do a smear campaign against veterans, active duty service members, and federal government employees and civil servants so that the public isn't so sad when they rip all the benefits away and take all the money for themselves. That's my 2 cents.
Your 2 cents is the truth. It's a big club, and you ain't in it, folks. It's a oligarchy. They're drinking up all of our milkshake.
All right, you're
All of
5
our
minutes
milkshake.
late. You're 5 minutes late to get on the horn.
Oh yeah, with Jen. Or we gotta go. All right, everyone. Subscribe. Listen to Allison. I'm gonna have Jen Budd on here in a minute. Jen Budd is a whistleblower. She was with Border Patrol for 6 years, and now she's all about abolish ICE. I'm telling you, she knows it inside and out. And we're gonna talk about how we can resist and abolish ICE in about 2 minutes. Thank you, Allison.
Please tell her hello for me. She's been on the Mueller She Wrote podcast before. She's
I'll tell
incredible.
her right now.
And ask her about what she thinks about that veterans benefits article. Thanks,
I'll ask her right
everybody.
now. Bye, everyone. Thank you.